Oh, yeah. Thank you, ma'am. I will bring some more. If you can just, okay, I will bring, because this is my station. I just took that off the sheet. They wouldn't feel stupid.
That's weird. That'd be great. Thank you. I guess I'm supposed to address this meeting, and I, but my name is Tim Kirsch. I'm the chairman of the North Canyon Sewer Authority Board of Directors. I've got a couple of my other board members here with me. We want to thank the city of Coburg and y'all for coming down and inviting us to accepting our plea to come down and look at your facility. I'm told that it's going to be very similar to the facility that we have proposed, as well as the one in the city already currently operates. We have a what's called step system, as well as some coarse water, of course, sewer mains too. So anyway, we're currently exploring putting in some sewer systems throughout the North Canyon, one that will host gates and put them into the Mill City system, as well as a brand new system up in Detroit and Indiana. And hopefully what we can learn from you guys will help us to streamline our process and come up with a better system, obviously. So looking to see what you've done, how it was financed, the rate structures, all those kind of things are going to be important to us. So I would like to let my friends here introduce themselves.
Ken Woodward, Detroit Vice Chair. Thank you for inviting us, and thank you for, we got lots of questions.
Several Evans of Gates of the Treasurer operation.
I think we have one more representative from Gates that's going to be joining us.
And I would like, we also have Don.
Well, yeah, I was going to let everybody else introduce themselves. So if everybody would please let us know who you all are too, that'd be grateful.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'm Courtney Flathers. I'm the Regional Solutions Coordinator in the Governor's Office for Lynn, Benton, Lane, and Lincoln County. So I have a portion of the Canyon Canyon. Here with my colleague Beth, who has been working on this project, but here also to listen and learn and understand how we can support.
Mary Carmichael with the Lincoln and I'm Nancy Bell. I'm the mayor here in Coburg, and I will tell you, I have a very fond place in my heart for the Santiam Canyon. I grew up in Staten, Sublimity, Almsville. My dad actually worked on Detroit Dam. We did a lot of time up. Our big thing was to take a ride up the canyon and go to Detroit and to Indiana and big gates and Mill City. And because he was a dam worker, we got to go into the innards of the dam and just wanted to put his heart done, which is pretty cool. I was devastated to see your devastation. Happy that we can help you with that.
Hi, I'm Angie. I am the city administrator retiring at the end of the month. So I have been here at the city since 2014. Started as finance director and came in just as the project was being completed and shifting to standard utility billing and collection of the and then moved into the city administrator.
Brian Harmon, Public Works Director. I, as the mayor, have kind of a fondness for the Santiam Canyon. Both my grandparents raised my parents in Mill City and Lyons. So, yep.
I'm Chris Einbo. I'm the project manager for Marion County. We are the contracting agency for the construction phase of the project.
Good morning, I'm Jay Keepwell. I am the mayor that actually had to survive the sewer project. And so I was invited because basically I didn't really want to hear me say what I am the man that we're around at that point. But Ann, I also wanted to Ann understates her role. She came in with a crisis mode and bailed us out into serious accounting and finance situation that we found ourselves quagmired in, and so I would be thankful for her finances and the rest of this project because we were having serious difficulties with dispute and reports and partnership reports and the construction funding done correctly. And anyway, she stepped in. One of the reasons she did that. Brian was also very instrumental in bringing our project up and keeping it running very smoothly for the last 8 years. And I think he deserves a lot of credit and his experience with the value.
Hi, I'm Adam Hanks. I'm taking over city administrator. This is today week 2 for me. I've set up a really nice transition time for me to be able to absorb and get everything up to speed. So I'm here to listen, mainly absorb, and offer maybe some insights. I did some extensive wastewater work with the city of Coburg over the last 12 months. Who had some very serious DEQ issues and smart fees and that went for a regional connection system. Actually, it's not yet. The vote is August 22nd. Hopefully, the community votes yes or no. I'm glad to be here.
I'm Tchaikovsky, Regional Systems Coordinator in the Governor's Office for Marion County and Denver County.
Project manager.
I'm Cyrus Lindenberg. I'm a grant writer and I work for COG.
Yes, I work for the COG to support Laura.
Well, one thing I'd like to say about Mill City's current sewer system is it's about 30 years old now, and it had a life expectancy when it was built to 25 years. So obviously we're looking to, and we have rebuilt some of the portions of it, the lift stations and things like that. But back when it was done back then, it was before my time, but we were basically forced to finance it on a 40-year loan. So we're still paying for a system that is now wore out, and we're having to do that. The 40-year loan to make it affordable. Most of the Canyon residents are low to moderate income, and so we want to make sure that what we come up with for a solution for the future for the system is going to be able to accommodate those folks still today, because low to moderate income cannot withstand a high sewer and water bill. And I know that Detroit had to rebuild a bunch of their water plants here because of the fires. Now all of a sudden they got hit with an $80 a month water bill. So to add a big expensive sewer system bill onto it is going to be very unaffordable for the local resident. And so we're looking for ways to be creative in getting it done. Now the governor's office or the legislature did give us a $50 million boost, but because we live under what they call the three basin rule, anything we build has to be much better than just a standard sewer system, because we're not allowed any kind of surface discharges and other things. So the three basin rule makes everything twice as expensive as well. So even the monies that have already been targeted for us, which is like I said, $50 million, is not going to cover even the one plant to build for Mill City and Gate. So it's gonna be more than that, double that even to put another one in up at Detroit and Niagara. So we're still in the beginning phases and of the design or what it is that we're going to have to build and where we're going to place it, but we need to come up with some good solid numbers and some doing this kind of investigation and seeing that there's a few folks done down here as well as what we can do up there. I feel the ex-mayor's pain. I wasn't involved in politics back when they built the sewer system, but I know that it was extremely controversial in Mill City, and there were some actually even a fist fight or two, I think, at some city council meetings back then over putting in a sewer system brand new and like that. Because many people right now are putting in very expensive sand filtration systems, and we're going to ask them to abandon those in a couple of years and hook up to a sewer. And they're going to say, well, we just spent $30,000 putting in this septic system. Why do we want to put on the sewer system? So the cities are going to have to come up with some strong ordinances requiring everybody to hook up. And it's going to be a job to sell it. But like I say, in order to sell it, it's got to be affordable to everybody. I am determined not to go down in history as being the guy that doubled everybody's sewer bill. So that's not the way I want to go out. So I guess questions that we might have, I'm going to ask my fellow board members if they have anything that they want to talk about in specific.
Detroit hasn't voted on the $80, supposed to be $85 water bill yet. Coming soon. And then you put a sewer in, and then you have that rate on top of that bill. How did you folks afford it? How did you? But there's a rumor saying that you got to start charging before the facility was even built. How did you do that?
Yeah, we did start charging, and I'm thinking it was
$50 a month initially, and it ramped up to $65 before we actually started construction. Let me just preface that before I feel your pain. But these situations are hard because, and literally hard because you are stuck between the proverbial rock and hard place. We were fortunate in that we were able to get, we thought we were fortunate when we got $9 million from the federal air. $50 million in this day and age is better than the $9 million we got. But even so, we sold this to citizens as both the right thing to do and because we didn't have a choice. Our city Coburg had been constrained, growth constrained for at least a decade or more. We were up against the urban growth boundary. We've still been working on that. We still have only gotten our urban growth boundary partially updated, but that's a different story. But nobody would even consider an urban growth boundary expansion unless we had a solution. Our businesses were dying because we didn't have enough. We couldn't keep enough traffic and business open for them to survive. Plus, there was a lot of inefficient usage of the property, business property, because of the low density requirements necessitated for having a drain field on site. So we sold the project basically on the right thing to do. Now we had spent at least 15 years working on this, in fact longer than that, because there was a vote in 1995 and 93 where the feds would have paid 95% of the cost of the gravity transfer system. And nobody was voted down because $35 a month is too much. And now our sewer rates, just the sewer rate is 90.
Yeah.
Just the sewer is 96. So, the way we've dealt with affordability issue is we like where we live. We want our city to thrive. We want our area to thrive. You folks live in a wonderful area. My grandmother was born inside, so I have organ connections, deep organ connections as well. So I understand that, but at the same time, there's a certain reality check that every community in Oregon is facing as they get to the point where they're upgrading their water and sewer and all utility infrastructure issues as they age out. It's the same thing we're facing as our highways deteriorate. Things were built in a flurry years ago, and now, it's coming around again. And we're all facing that. Sometimes things are more expensive than other places. It's the trade-off of living in one of the most beautiful places on earth. So you almost don't have a choice. Will you survive if you live on a septic system? Can you live on a septic system? What are the rules? I mean, these are all trade-offs. You just have to be explained to people. And we were able to have a vote. We had done enough engineering work over the last 15 years before we started construction. We have a really good handle on what our costs are going to be. I would urge you to not wait that long, because you have enough numbers right now to actually start getting some preliminary votes on this is the range of things are going to be. I say all this because political will is probably the number one most important factor in making all this work. You must be empowered by the people, and you must stick to your guns as leaders. There's just no other way around it. I can't sugarcoat it. We sold them on the pre-construction because we were able to say, look, if we went with this much money before we start construction for 2 years, this is how much we're going to be able to lower the rate. Because it's all accumulated, it's all net present value, basically. It all boils down to net present value. And everything, all the rate things we did. But we also made it part of a package. You don't sell the individual items, you sell the package. We were fortunate that we had an industrial area that enabled us to have an urban development agency And so we want to do, when it was set up to fund the sewer system for that thing. Because one of the biggest beneficiaries of the sewer system was actually the industrial area. Because now they can have much higher density of their businesses and operations. And our Coburg North industrial park over there, which is a huge success, both commercially for them and financially for us, would not be possible. So they were very, that was put into place before I got involved. Which was really fortunate. I don't remember how much, I think it was 8 million.
For what, for your age? 13 million.
13 million, which eventually.
When they took to 13 million.
Yeah. But we had a $26 million project. So, you know, a lot of the folks, so we have $96 million, excuse me, $96 raise given URA, given the earmark, and given we also put together a local improvement system for the rest of the town. And that was also pre-construction. So we had many debates about how to do the LID, what was equitable, what was fair. And that's the other thing we have to keep in mind. I was really pleased to say at the end of the war, basically everybody or nobody. A poster child for that is Fall City. They're having serious problems getting their sewer system horrible working because they made it violent. Effectively violent. So that's part of the control you've got, and that's great. You're already on the right track, but equity is a key issue. You've got to be able to say it's as equitable as it can. And the pre-construction is a big deal because it also sets the mindset of people paying into this. So we were paying them for at least for 2 years before we started construction. And that was very important because you created local community wealth. Because now we're paying and we want to get our money. That was really important. We able people to buy into it immediately after we voted.
The fire didn't help Detroit at all, or any as it came to it just doubled the cost. You know, we were awarded 50 million, 40 goes to Gates and Mill City, and 10 goes to Detroit to put it together on paper, and hopefully a temporary system for the commercial area of Detroit. IGANA has all the commercial property. I mean, they have lots of it, and they could really, if they want a system, but it has to be affordable.
Part of this is also changing people's mindset of what affordable.
Well, can I just say, I want to piggyback on what former Mayor Foodwell has said. Communication, that is absolutely key. It was key when we were setting up the system. It's key as we have to adjust rates to continue the system, to rebuild infrastructure. Our infrastructure in Coburg is aging, and we're having to replace pipes. I mean, Brian and Bert and Ty can give you all of the background. I just see the little pieces, but the more you communicate, why do we have to do this? What are we going to do? Yes, this is what it's going to cost you, but here's what you're going to get back. I cannot emphasize enough. Town hall meetings, newsletters, any way that y'all communicate with your constituents. Communicate till you don't want to communicate anymore. Bring your council members on board. Let them go door to door. Let them talk to neighbors. You know, I've heard, and I just moved to Coburg in 2015. So right as the system was coming.
She's a beneficiary.
I'm a beneficiary. I almost had a heart attack because I lived out in the county for a long time, and with a well and my own septic, and so on, I went, oh my gosh. But as I learned and as I talked to people and become more politically involved, what I heard from people is we did not understand. Now, obviously, there was a lot of communication, but we cannot over communicate.
And on that same note, it's also really important to say the same thing every time you communicate. Don't change your story. I mean, you can update your story. You've got new numbers, okay? Then you communicate the updates. Here's this is what we learned. And then you say the same thing far longer than you think you need to. 3, 4, 5 times longer than you think. Because people don't hear, they don't listen, it doesn't.
They just don't
They don't want to listen, they want to ignore it.
I think one of the important messages that you send out, so we do a 20-year analysis. We have a platform that we have designed, and it tracks our water and sewer and utility rates out 20 years. So it includes all our debt as it is today. But the communication to the public is we're going to look at that every single year. So our council, we redo the platform every year in March. That tells us we're still looking out 20 years. Every year, it's going to keep marching forward, but we're still looking out because we all have been through the last 3 years, and operations, materials, and services have went up 30% in some places. And so that's a communication to the public that we have to make. But if you have that communication always, that council looks at rates every year, then they know they expect it, that it's coming. The other thing I can't emphasize enough, Coburg has a transportation utility fee. We're one of the few cities in the state that has one at $7 a household per month. So it wasn't small, but the communication to the public took 2 years. We didn't just, we went out, we created brochures. They received that brochure at least 3 times. We did newsletters, we did town halls, just trying to communicate the need. When we passed the top, we had one appeal, and that was an easy appeal that we could solve real fast. And so I met every business owner in their office, if I could, sat down with them and said, this is what it's going to mean to you. We just really reached out as much as we could early on and continued to provide them the message over and over again in different forms. So I always say, hit them 3 times in 3 different ways. But in the end, with the top, we got 0 pushback at the time of the vote because people understood that our streets need to stay. And so that constant communication. Yeah. The other piece that I wanted to share, when you're talking about ordinance, I can't tell you how important it is that you have an ordinance that says everybody must be on, because the city of Coburg in 1982, there was a neighborhood outside of the city limits that was having water issues. So Coburg, if it was a regional problem, Coburg agreed to take that neighborhood and hook them up to our water system. So we went out and got a loan, and which we're still paying on. It sunsets in 26. And Coburg has been paying the loan on that system, and then those people that live in that neighborhood pay a water bill that doesn't even begin to cover the cost of the loan.
Even though it's close to the rate we paid.
Right, but here's the problem is we didn't make that community promise they were going to get on the system. So we started out with 53 users, and now we have 36 because people have elected to go dig a septic, install a septic, so they're no longer payers in the system. Well, sorry, but so they're no longer in the system paying their share. So Coburg's kind of left holding the bag here that's not really ours. And we've reached out to other, you know, the county and stuff to say this is, and it's gonna be a problem that Coburg will have to face and solve in the very near future because their water system's in trouble. Our guys spend more time up there than they almost. So anyway, I was gonna say is that making sure that you cover that when you're going out for an ordinance, making sure that it's clear they don't have a choice.
That's part of the, COGS agreement, Marion County's agreement, you know, some of the monies that are there made, you know, have been given to from DEQ or Marion County. If you are going to take a loan for your septic, no matter if it's advanced technology or whatever it is, when the sewer comes through, I'm just speaking for Detroit, you know, and Idana. You know, Idana wasn't really affected by the fire, but Detroit, not serious issue. If you're going to take a loan or if you're going to get some of this grant money, you have to sign a document stating when the sewer comes through, you are going to hook up. But when you're, that's all great, you know, but when you're spending $30,000 for the small lots in Detroit, I'll just speak for Detroit. When you have those small lots, 4,800, 5,200 square feet, you know, it's 8,000. I think that's what the rule is now. You got to have 8,000, but you'll have a lot of them grandfathered in way back when. But anyway, you can't. There's no primary or secondary, so you go on advanced technology, and when you're spending $30,000, and then you're saying, "Hey, sign this document," they're going, And I understand you're $96 a month. Wow. And that's a tough one. That's a tough one in that area. A lot of people would be pushed out if it was $96.
If they would, if there is a great new program for utility bills, Coburg used to have always had a reduced income. But now the state has got involved in, and I have to have the utility, the ladies that work in utilities, but now the state's got involved in. So there is that option of the low income assistance that people can get, they can apply for and get, and the city is not, it's being reimbursed by the state, and so
it's the individual property.
It's the individual property, and so there's always that we can honor low income and provide assistance for that, and we do here in Coburg, because there are people. You're right. There's fixed income people. There's people that are barely making it, but there is an option for the utility bill.
And that's good, and that should be. And we've discussed that over the years. You know, on a monthly meeting, how are we going to take care of them? You know, how is it going to be affordable to the other individuals? Wow, it's the communication part is very important. Totally agree on that. We have our monthly meeting. We have our council meeting. But door to door, a lot of people are going, "Well, I didn't know this was happening." Yeah. Wow.
So you have to reach out.
Yeah.
And not rely on the citizens to, you have to.
No, and you're right.
But part of the communication is credible, just above board, unemotional, credible facts.
No emotion.
So, but also you have to create the tone that you, or the tone and take the position that you are being prudent, responsible fiduciary agent. We were able to set that tone before the sewer project came on board. About the time we were doing the pre-construction loan, we were also pre-construction fees. We were also dealing with other ongoing accounting issues, and we discovered that the water fund was not covering the water expenses. And so we figured out, well, what do the rates need to be doing to pay their way? Because that's the whole point of the water fund, is to pay the water system. It's not supposed to be subsidized by the government. So we did the analysis, and we figured out that we needed to go from $35 to $53. Or we could go from $35 to $65 in three steps. So I sent the council members, no talk to people. I want you to individually talk to your constituents and ask them. We also send out newsletters with the cloud saying, you know, what do you prefer as the rate structure? And we did this for 3 or 4 months at least. Then we had a vote. And it was overwhelmingly, the citizens came back overwhelmingly saying that they wanted to just go to 53 minutes. And so because we were able to explain where what actual water fund costs were, we were explaining how much we were draining from the general fund, what we weren't able to do because of that drainage of the general fund, what the impact of that was. We put all of that information out there, and it was pretty clear. Everybody grumbled, but the city council voted, and there was 0 complaints. So we were able to set that tone before we started the construction. So that when we did the construction communication, we did our best to communicate certainty where we knew it, communicate uncertainty where we knew it, but bound the uncertainty. That way, when the real numbers came back, or when the estimates that people knew. For example, one of the key issues going into the sewer project was how many tanks we were going to have to replace. Nobody knew. Well, those are expensive. They're expensive to dig up because you have to dig up all the contaminated dirt too. And then you got to bring in the fill, you got to bring in the tank. It's a big deal. It's very disruptive to the residents' water. So we had to do our best to put the water staff the way they were. And the estimate going into it was 25% of the tanks. That was in our original estimate for the project. It turned out to be 48% of the. Many of these were steel tanks that were just bypassing the greenfield altogether. The bottoms were gone. There was no metal there. It was just raining rock, but we went through into the ground with no distribution, no pollution, no tiny much worst case scenario. So that's but since we didn't know what the number was, we included that as an estimate, not a certainty. So we were able to go back to this community and look at this about reality. And it's more like a leak, maybe like a bit. But back on the equity thing, and back to your people spending all of this money, and I completely appreciate that. I would encourage you to come up with some way from an equity standpoint of defraying some of these poor folks that are spending $30,000 down. Now, if you're in Detroit and spending $30,000, you don't know when you're going to win the system. You just have money to design it. So, But one of the things we did here was we had a big uproar about, the people with new tanks and the people with the people with new tanks. I don't want to, I already spent on this. So what we did to create an equity situation is we made the tank the city. The city owns all the tanks. Even though they're on private property, to connect, you have to start with every resident and business to the community in the city of Pisa to be on the property to inspect the town and to service the town as needed. So that way we were able to explain to people that had pristine homes, brand new homes, relatively new homes, that they were, the city as a whole, their costs were being lowered because we did the architecture.
And you're looking at the gravity.
I was just in the discussion.
That's very impressive.
That's why the settling was done locally. The distributed settling was
No, I like your idea, counselor getting involved. I mean, we appreciate Marion County coming in and having meetings and whatnot, but counselors, one-on-one in the community, basically, yes. I've been working on trying to acquire one for Detroit going on 12 years. And it's difficult. And it started way back when. And we have all the reports. We have it all done. Probably need more. But the financing is the most important. What we have 10 million set aside in Detroit and Idana to do the plans, to do everything else. There was a question of Denny, which is not here, from Detroit as well, to the governor, why can't we do 2 projects at once? Why are we waiting 10 years? Because when you're waiting 10 years, now everybody's putting in new septic systems, spending all that money on advanced technology, why can't we just start now? Well, funding's important, yes. We started at 50 million. Now it's going to be 100 million. So we'd like, instead of waiting 10 years, where the 60 million we're looking for is going to be 90 million, why can't we do it now? And I really like the idea of more than 1 or 2 people in the community. Now you're involving all of council, all of the mayors.
That is your basis for political work.
Yeah, yes, and
political commitment. Political commitment on the part of the council is extremely important. And also the knocking on doors and sitting down with people and explaining numbers to them. A lot of people are overwhelmed by numbers. They see, 15 years of numbers or 20 years of numbers and they're terrible.
I think it's important to keep the timeline, the track of a timeline from when you start your messaging. And so with the stuff, I know we continue to build on the timeline and reminding the citizens, on this day, the council met. On this day, the council had a work session. On this day, we sent a survey out to the community. On this day, we had a community meeting. And so that when you get to the end, if anybody in that community says, I don't know what's going on, no pause. Because we really did remind them all along, this is happening. This is happening. This is happening. This is happening. We want to hear from you. But absolutely reaching out to those that you don't think are going to be engaged. Maybe you have a community of Hispanic. You have to look at that kind of thing. You have to say, how do we reach that community? How do we, so that they're all getting the same message fairly, but just reminding them continuously what has happened to get to where you want to, because they will forget.
And that goes back to every time you communicate, you also have to answer the why question. Why are we doing this? Why is it necessary? Why, So it's very important that the councilors, the mayors, all have the same talking points. Because the why we're doing it doesn't change But you have to say it, and every time you come, the city council knocks on somebody's door, or wants to sit down and talk numbers and explain what's going on, they're gonna go back, you're gonna have to circle back, the affordability issue, the overwhelming cost. And they're gonna come back and they say, well, why do we have to do this? Why is this not? And people are gonna come back and they're gonna say, I can't afford this, we can't afford this, and you have to be able to say to them, we can't afford not to.
Oh, gotta do it now, yeah, no.
Can't afford not to. Otherwise, you have to be able to answer that question.
What, because you're not gonna be discharging to the Santiam, what kind of permit is it right now? What kind of permit do you have through the DEQ?
The city mostly, I couldn't tell you what the permit actually is, but it's, we have basically a filter system, and then we do basically we have a big septic field for the whole city. Right, so it's ground discharge.
Yeah, the new plant will be under a WPCL. The new one.
So you will have limits that you have to meet. So one of the things that I would say, because you're talking about that 10-year period, things change, and they will change at the DEQ year to year. We're working off of an expired permit. It was pretty much expired the day that the plant fired up, right? So 10 years later, and there's a lot of cities in Oregon that are working off expired permits. So what you would be or could be looking at is different limits that you would have to meet, even though you design your plant for every limit on your current permit, right? Well, that could change. So that may mean that your plant may have to be modified to meet those additional limits. So that's one of the things why I would say you want to pull the trigger as fast as you can to get into that limit so you can work like we're working right now with an expired permit. We don't know what our permit limits will be when they renew, but my guess is it's going to be more stringent temperature requirements, a lower chlorine limit than we have right now. So those are the two things that we possibly could be looking at.
Well, Detroit has to pump uphill to Idana. And then from there, the drain field is up Forest Road. We have to pump it up McCoy Creek Road, not a creek, but up a road far out of town, probably another 3 miles. I'm estimating maybe 5, no more than 5, up into Forest Service land, which we'll have to purchase. Because there is no land anywhere near the facility that can take a drain field due to the fact it's Santiam, you know, and they will not let one drop into that river. So that the cost is just the 3 basin rule has got our hands tied. We have to meet it, and so it's going to be expensive. And that's all fine. You know, you're not going to go change the 3 basin rule. That's never going to happen. They're not going to change any part of it, and that's the McKinsey, Clackamas, and the Danny. So we're right there.
That was going to be my next question. How big of a hurdle would it be to not get exempt, but modify the 2 basin?
We thought about it. We've been thinking about that for years.
I'm not too sure if they didn't get some modifications to it down in McKinsey somewhere, but they did not get any. They were working on trying to do that down there at one time, but
We're talking about Blue River.
but they weren't.
No,
So yeah, it's something that just won't happen, I'm sure. So it is a requirement that everybody downstream from it benefits from it. For us, it just adds a lot of costs because, you know, we're just held to a higher standard than all the big communities downstream don't have to comply with, but, because they've had sewer systems that dump into the laminate stuff themselves, when
They'll get their.
they exceed capacity.
Everybody's gonna
But that,
So, along with this, everybody's getting the terms, one of the things I would say is that I'm sure that you probably is gonna lose it. But I mentioned earlier that every community is facing a new situation, is facing this sticker shock. This huge sticker shock. And it would be probably helpful to get a collection just so that people don't understand that if you're going to be where, you know, you're going to be at the upper end of the distribution simply because of the inflation.
Not really know.
But you're not that far out of line with everybody. Look at all of it.
You know, in 97, there was 18 million set aside for Detroit and Idana. Then no interest or something, you know, $35, $40 a month, and so all those funds were deobligated. There's 8.6 million and for just Detroit in 14, and now we're where we're at. So yes, I got all the figures. You want to see the increase, the jump, folks, it's not going to get cheaper. It's just not going to happen.
Laura had a question here, I believe.
What was your timetable with, the commissioning for your outage? You mentioned the ordinance, you mentioned passing ordinance with Santiam. So backing up from your commissioning date, when did you start in the committee?
Well, the project have been closed. You know, late 90s, early 2000s, forward. Coburg ended up with a major crisis in 2004. So we were pulling our way out of that in 2004, 2007, and then they started getting commitments to do the sewer project. They started actually construction of a gravity system in 2008. It wasn't going to be successful. They delayed some time. There was a lot of talk in that era, and in 2006 to 2008, about connecting to Eugene. We would have had to pipe it all the way down Coburg Road, across the McKenzie, and then go down, and we would have had to upgrade maybe drive and across the line. So it would have been very expensive for us to do that. And one of the big concerns Coburg had to do that is we would have been somewhere involved in terms of rates, right? We would have zero representation. And Eugene didn't want us to connect. They weren't excited about it. So Coburg decided to go its own way. So that's one of the reasons why we abandoned the sewer project, which is a huge ground system. We determined that step system would be more useful. And so we had huge community meetings in 2009 and 2008, started in 2009 and 2008 and 2009. And, 5 or 6 well-attended meetings where there was a lot of debate. So we didn't have any fist fight, but there were a lot of, there was some very heated discussion. We had a vote in 2010. And that passed through the I drove to the council, and then we had a second vote to parliamentary review. We had to have a second vote, and that one passed better than we. So that was the, from that standpoint, before those meetings, those votes, we have had major communication for at least 2 years before that. The discussions about the plan, outreach meetings, open houses, debated designs. We had a large contingent of they said there's a pro and a con group. The cons were well organized, but one of the problems they were having is they were creating an apples oranges rather than apples to apples comparison because they were concluding a whole bunch of costs. So we took their numbers, added reality to it, and then determined that what they were promoting was actually more expensive.
You mentioned you found something, $7 per house. And that's just in the Coburg community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's specifically for streets, sidewalks, infrastructure there. That has nothing to do with sewer and water.
Yeah, the high cost is being put onto us because of regulations and rules. We have thought about putting a user fee on everybody downstream from the Santiam River to help pay for it. Either it's 75 cents or as high as $2 on a water bill or a sewer bill for both the water bill. But anyway, that's how we were going to generate some money. That was a thought.
It doesn't get a lot of popularity.
We had, you always have your old guard. It's been used in every community, and I think it's really important to go out to your old guard. And I had old guard that to the day they died. One of them just recently died, a couple of them, who farmers mainly for our community, who were the old guard, and they were not necessarily paying. But at least we got them to the point of acceptance that yes, I can see why we had to do this. I still don't like it. But identify who your old guard are, because those are the ones that people are going to look to bounce off their feelings because they trust them. They've been around it. So, and it's different having children, but you definitely have it. And, and the other piece is there's 5 in every town who want to spread all kinds of stuff. And I try to really pay attention to what is being spread out there, give them back with that. So I don't respond to miscommunications or misinformation. I respond with that every time. And so your old guard can help with that too, or they can hinder it depending on how you partner with them. And it's identifying your stakeholders very early on and making sure that your message is not just with your city council, but with your stakeholders as well. And that's a whole lot of sit downs. Explaining, and you may never get them on your side, but at least they have the facts. And what I have found with the old guard is that for the most part, they're men of their word. They started their life where handshakes meant something, and so they do have a high integrity. So they're not going to throw misinformation out if they know the facts. And they're not going to be so that was just my experience with it.
You saw the pushback in here about it downstream using fee already. You seen that?
So that goes back to the equity issue. And that goes back to also how you're running this, how you're managing this, who's paying for what? Is there cost sharing for is it a regional management system, individual rate? Is it a consolidated rate? Well, does it have to sell more city and why they have to pay out more? Because, so where's the effort? Always challenge yourself. Where's the effort? And that's a really good task for every communication. An example of that, we put in a local improvement district. We debated as a council, we worked session, what equity meant in terms of a local improvement district. What is the basis for the rent? We landed on square foot costs as the only reasonable estimate for connection. And it was the least, difficult of all of the scenarios. So none of them were really that quick, but it was the most defensible. And one example is we had a council meeting we were explaining it. And there were two landowners on the west side, huge parcels of land within the city. If you think about it, from the city government standpoint, 20 acres inside the urban growth plan is gold. And they were, both homeowners were astounded at their, I think, $15,000 to $20,000 and they were just living. Well, one was living, one was to die. And they cornered me after the city council meeting. And said, why do I have to pay this when I only have the same number of clients as everybody else? And I had to explain to them that when we were building the sewer system, I wasn't building a line to their 20 acres for their toilet. I was building a line to their place of 100 toilets that could be built on their land. Well, I don't want to build on it. I understand that you don't want to. Or why should we dig up the city street and upgrade the system, or the connections that could be built? Maybe your kids will inherit your property and something else. And I said, you have a luxury. You live on 20 acres inside the 15 acres, whatever it was, inside the city limits. That's a luxury. This isn't, that is unheard of. So you live on your estate, that's just what the estate fees cost. One of them was, one of the homeowners was just outraged. I mean, just outraged. The only way, practically sitting there. The other one looked at me and she said, how many lots can we do?
I was going to say that we also offered a financing. So I don't know if I would recommend this or not. So I had to set it up. But basically, equity-wise, if somebody doesn't have the money to pay that LID, right off the bat, they allow them to finance it over 10 years. And so they could either pay every month automatically out of their bank account, or they could make a once-a-year payment. It was their choice. And we're wrapping that up right now. So that should be wrapped up in Fund 4. Mostly, everybody will be paid off. It's a little bit more work to collect it because you have to bill and chase those that don't make their payments. But from a standpoint of a person who just didn't have the $2,500, and some of those were financed $2,500, they only paid $13 a month. But it gave them a chance to see how they could manage it, and that it wasn't going to be a huge impact.
Created options and choices, and don't we all want those?
Yeah.
I'm just been reminded it's 11 o'clock already. And we're supposed to take off and go do a tour of the facility. Does anybody have any questions that they wanted to ask or wrap up with there?
Let me just offer one piece on, I think with the rate design that Ann mentioned doing that every year, and then the regulatory changes that Brian was talking about. I think it's super important to really look at your O&M over the long haul. You know, the big number always is that capital number, and you can get capital money from lots of different places. It's not always cheap, but you can get it. What you often can't get from anywhere, except for a raise, is O&M. And that cost is skyrocketing. And that's like your estimate on the tank, 25% return to 48, very easily can see a doubling of O&M off from your estimates to your actual. Is a high, and then the regulations get worse. You know, get better, I guess. Environmentally, they get better. They get harder to comply with. So just to throw it out there, I think it's really important to mark those as estimates.
Thanks for bringing that up, and we cannot underestimate that, because you have to pay for it. Otherwise, you'll be subsidizing it from general funds, and that's the quickest way to go broke for the world. And but it's also sticker shock to people, and you're a lot better off having sticker shock up front. And be conservative on your own. Be conservative.
Well, we're going to have to go with the mechanical plants that's going to have a higher rate of or higher certification levels to operate as well as 24/7.
That's the other element.
That's going to be
highly
much more expensive.
Our guys behind the scenes get a test, and they're hard to come by.
That's what we're facing right now too. So it's going to be very expensive for the O&M.
Are you looking to contract that, or are you trying to do it in-house?
Well, we haven't gotten that far down the road yet, but early on in our discussions, we had talked about possibly the city of Mill City taking on some of that, but we don't have the certification levels there. So we're also talking, you know, maybe we could contract with the city of Salem or somebody else that has that expertise and stuff like that and willing to do so. I think the city of Salem would want to because of the downstream user as well. So maybe instead of getting a $2 on the fee or on everybody's water bill, maybe we can talk them into just covering some of the O&M on it.
Well,
so
unfortunately, the legislature created the 3 basin rule. They didn't create a provision for downstream users.
Right.
Subsidizing upstream users. So that's maybe something we can talk to the legislators about.
Because that's also
a burden. Might be your own authority to. We're not.
And something put in mind with your certified staff. So the most expensive cost everywhere. And if they are in the first system, if you're operating. So it used to be when I started in finance, a normal load was about 24%, and then you did have employees that reached up to about 34%. We're looking at almost 50% load on some employees now, simply because of the laws and stuff that have come out of how you have to cover your employees. So making sure that your personnel costs, you've got to include that load, and it's upwards of 40% right now. So be careful with that, because that can trip you up real fast in your own.
And that gets really into your business model for operations. You know, is your business model going to be contracting to a third party, private, because you know the big players, or try to do intergovernmental agreements. Intergovernmental agreements most likely will still have that PERS loading issue, the PERS system coupled with having technical, extensive, sought after, in demand operator staff makes it really expensive. So I think that the business decision of contracting versus yourselves or another governmental agency is a big deal. I would, there's pros and cons. If you're contracting, you're responsible for getting that backup level to be in there. If you're running the show, that person leaves, you're stuck. Right? So there's sometimes higher cost of contracting, but it covers.
It can be lower risk,
right? It can be. But pros and cons.
Right. I would, if those are your options, I would say either do it yourself or IGA with a downstream. I thought an event area is contractors don't really give a hoot. They'll come in and run and operate your plant to make you know, to make limit on your permit, but a lot of times your preventative maintenance stuff goes out the window, and you're still paying for that through your contract. And what will happen is 10 years from now, 15 years from now, they'll be like, see you later. Here's our new contract. You can't afford this. We're leaving. And now you're stuck with a plant that had no PMs. And you're going to have to fix everything that they didn't like. It does happen.
Or you have to, which raises your cost.
Go take a look at what you have. Oh, we got, go ahead.
I apologize for being late. I'm Brian Davis. So design against performance 10 years down the road, right? How does that fare out?
I'm the new guy. I'll divert that.
So design and performance. Great question. Because we went step and membrane filtration, when we get out there, I'll show you kind of a snapshot of what we're talking about here. But the low loading on the fibers, because that's kind of the brain or the heart of the plant, right? The low loading on the fibers is all the solids stay on site. So we get credits, pre-treatment credits from the DEQ for that. So the design and where we're at now, the plant's operating right now almost like it was brand new. So 10 years later, because of a lot of the preventative maintenance things that we do at the plant, we believe that it might be a long time before things really start breaking down. Now we have breakdowns all the time. The guys will be the first. When we go out there, they'll explain to you just recently some of the breakdowns that we've had, and they're expensive, mind you. When a pump goes out, you know, to replace it is $10,000. We run our own lab, so we just placed a lab order that was close to $9,000. The incubator went out, so that was $4,000 for that $9,000. So we have no change to it. So
it's very much like we, you know, everybody that's what we have to tell that.
So it was originally a DE plant, and they've changed hands a couple times. I think they went from Xenon to Viola now is what it's called. And we pay. There's some internal debate if we should keep paying this or not. That we pay about $22,000 a year for 24-hour monitoring services. So if something happens at the plant, they can see that in real time. We can call them and we can troubleshoot anything that's going on over the phone with them. There are other membrane plants that don't do that. They struggle. I think those other plants, they struggle a little bit. It's just like buying insurance. You know, do you want good insurance or do you want low rate insurance? And we opt with the high rate insurance because we get there's a benefit.
And so do you think you're ahead of the performance timeline?
Oh yeah, so membrane lifespan for our hollow fibers, the Z-weed, is 7 to 10 years. We're on year 10 and they're still looking and functioning like they're brand new. We think that, I think anyway, we can get double the lifespan out of them. Every time a field services representative comes out, they comment on how these things look and how they operate.
And
so
pumps and monitoring systems are ahead of good ones.
Yeah, I think so. We can kind of go through this slowly out there. A couple things that I will mention.
Good morning in progress.
Queensburg, Roger Lunch,